Welcome everybody tonight, and I particularly want to thank Kensington for inviting us here tonight. We have a lot of different groups, and I'm not going to introduce everybody, but we do have one special guest who is the Lapeer County Prosecutor. Byron Conchu is his name, and he's here because they are facing the same problem that all of us are facing, a huge heroin problem, opiate addiction. They've had 14 deaths, 8 that are confirmed from heroin, and 6 others that they think were heroin related but have not been absolutely substantiated yet. So he is here to find out what we're doing, and hopefully we're going to be able to partner with them to grow FAN even bigger than what it's become at this point. I want to just do a brief introduction about FAN and what we're all about. We're a group that has been in existence for over 3 years now. We started because we had 9 deaths in Fraser and Roseville of young people under the age of 25. And to be really frank with you, we just got tired of watching young people die. Several of our parents that are speaking tonight were parents that lost their children to that addiction. And so we just decided that it was time that we start talking about this. As most of you in the room know, there's an incredible stigma that goes with addiction that stops people from talking openly about it. Parents don't want to talk about it because they don't want other people thinking they're bad parents. And addicts know that they're going to be looked at as though they are losers if they confess to the fact that they have a drug problem. What we're trying to do is erase that stigma and to get people talking. This is a huge problem. It's in epidemic proportions right now amongst our young people, and we want to make a difference with that. I told you what the statistics were in my area and also in Lapeer. Pinckney, who only has a 5,000 person population, had 13 people in 1 year, all under the age of 25, that died of heroin overdoses. There were 156 heroin-related deaths in Macomb County last year of young people. I don't know about you, but that makes me mad. It makes me good and mad. And the reason for that is our country spends billions of dollars every year inoculating people against H1N1, and our children are dropping like flies, and no one wants to deal with this issue. So we're here to be loud about this, to make a difference, and to start changing the face of addiction. It used to be that addiction was, you'd think heroin addict, and we thought about that street person that lived in Detroit under the bridge and in a gutter. And that's not what addiction looks like any longer. It's your kid that lives next door, my neighbor down the block. The young people that are sitting in this room, many of them are in recovery right now. They are normal kids doing normal things that make a mistake, and because they are not informed about the dangers of this drug before they get involved with it, their life takes a tumble. And that's what we're trying to do, is catch these kids before they cross over that boundary to make a difference. FAN, I told you, started because people died, and what are we trying to do? We're trying to change the face of addiction. We're trying to be preventative and educate people about addiction and the use of opiates. And we are also trying to get people involved so that we get a voice. MAD didn't get big because people sat in the back corner and didn't talk about drunk driving. They got big because they organized, and they got so loud that legislators had to listen to them. And that's what we're hoping to do with FAN. We've got several speakers tonight, and I'm going to tell you we normally don't do programs that are this drawn out, but because we are doing a video of this process tonight to do a professional video that we can send to schools, we're going to try to squeeze a few more speakers in so that we get lots of good footage. So I apologize for that, but I don't think by the end of this that you'll need an apology. They're very compelling speakers. They're great kids. I never thought, as I was a prosecutor for 13 years and I've been a judge for 11 years, I never thought I would call heroin addicts my friends, but I have become very close to these kids. I love them. They are like family to me, and I'm really proud of what they do to make a difference in our community. So that with that being said, I'm going to introduce our first speaker. Brandon is one of the young boys that has been with us since the inception of FAN. When I first met Brandon, he didn't look like he looks right now, but he's been in recovery for a while. He's a remarkable young man, and hopefully you'll give him your full attention. Brandon?
How you doing? My name's Brandon, and I'm an addict. And,
Hi, Brandon.
This headset, man, is like bugging me out. Well, I guess I'll start out by telling you a little bit about the way I grew up. I didn't come from the, nice suburban, upper middle class family like a lot of my friends these days did. Quite the opposite. I came from the family that, when I was growing up, you pretty much would have picked me out to kind of turn out to be the addict or alcoholic. I grew up with a family of alcoholics. Both my parents are, still alcoholics to this day, and and that was pretty much it. We were poor, and and it just kind of was the way it was. I started doing drugs for the first time at 13. Started off smoking weed when I got into middle school, and really prior to that, I had never thought about trying drugs. I was never a bad kid, and but I got to middle school, and some people I had met up with had started smoking weed, and they asked me if I wanted to try it, and there was more, plenty of them that were doing it, so I did it too, and I did it, and I couldn't stand it. It made me act completely ridiculous, and to the point where it made everybody else mad at me, when being around me, and so I wouldn't do it for a little while, and then the next time they were smoking weed, they'd ask me if I wanted to smoke, and I'd say yeah, because that's what all my my friends were doing it, and really I was just looking to have fun, I was just looking to have friends, hang out with them, do what they were doing, and it really seemed innocent, and we were smoking weed for a little while, and eventually I got used to that, and a couple of my friends had started with prescription pills. A buddy of ours, mom, was on a lot of different medications for a lot of different reasons, and they were easily accessible. And through the other friends of ours at high school, that were in high school, we kind of got to find out what they were, not only what they were, but what they did and how much they were worth as well, which kind of gave it a little bit more of an incentive almost, because I got to be like this little small-time drug dealer, and I thought it was cool. What can I say? And in all honesty, it was fun, for a while. Drugs do their job. Drugs' job is to make you feel good. Like, that's their whole entire purpose, and they do exactly that. But I guess just like with a lot of things, once you continue to do them for so much, you just kind of get used to it, and it's no longer fun and new and exciting. Now it's just average and normal, and it's not really that great. So then what do? Move on to the next thing, and especially once we got into high school and really got exposed to a lot of the older kids, I wanted to be cool. I wanted to fit in. Not only did I want to fit in, but I wanted to be popular. I wanted to do more than just fit in or just be, and all the kids at my high school, that's what all the popular kids were doing, so that's what I wanted to do too. And it's funny thinking about it now. I was just talking with somebody about it the other day, but I really got going on drugs when I got put on probation. And it's funny. Funny story. I had started selling weed out of my mother's house when I was 17, and which she didn't appreciate very much. And so eventually she ended up calling the cops on me, and I went to jail. And they put me on probation, and they started drug testing me for cocaine and marijuana. And at that time, I was really only smoking weed mostly, and then drinking a little here and there, and popping pills a little here and there. And now that I'm getting drug tested for this, I didn't know what to do, and I certainly didn't want to stop. And some friends of mine introduced me to bike. And I kind of did a little research on the internet, and it's an opiate, so and I thought I had it locked down. I'm like, great, I can still get high as much as I want to get high, and I can go and pass my drug test and pay my money and do my thing, and it's it's all good here and it's all good there, so it's all nothing to worry about, and I still got to have fun with my friends and drink on the weekends, and be cool and having fun, and and all those things, and and that didn't end up lasting, because Vicodin are expensive, and so I started to do Vicodin. It just, I just couldn't afford it. I didn't really work much, I had my little mini, drug deals that I did here and there to make a couple bucks, and stuff like that. But and a friend of mine introduced me to Oxycontin. He said, it's just the same thing, just stronger, so you don't have to take all these Vicodin. You can just take one of these. All right, and started doing that. But Oxycontin are really expensive, and as soon as the tolerance built for that, and and this one, I'm saying this, and it sounds like that this was over this long, drawn-out period of time, and this was over 9 months, something like that from Vicodin to Oxycontin, because, and I was just kind of hearing myself say that, but yeah, because I really like to get high, and that was evident from the very beginning, it wasn't, I tried to do it as a social, I did it socially, but I also did it in private, and I wanted to do it because it was fun and because it made me feel good, but it was to a whole nother extent past, I think, where a lot of people went with it, because when they weren't doing it, I would still do it, and so it was very progressive, and by the time, before I was 18, I was doing heroin, because I just kind of met the next person who knew the next person, and through the whole time, stopping was never, I didn't want to stop, I wanted to be high because being high felt good, and that's all I really knew, and at that time it was really, my life was a one day at a time kind of thing. Just for today, I want to have as much fun as I can, and feel as good as I possibly can, and until I go to bed, and when I wake up the following day, I'm going to do the same thing, and that's just how I saw things, and it's no one's surprise. As soon as I started doing heroin and other things, it just progressively got worse, as it does, and oddly enough, other people started, telling me that I had a problem, because I started doing, problem-related things. I remember when I was 18. This is such a horrible story. When I was 18, I didn't have any money. I wasn't working, and I needed to get some money because, if you don't know, when you're doing heroin and then you're not able to do it, you get very sick, and you go through withdrawals very, very quickly, So I also by this time I had left my mother's house, and was kind of just living wherever I could because, after she turned me into the police, obviously I couldn't continue to stay there, and so I went and broke into her house, rode a bike over there, and like I said, my family didn't have very much, and so the only thing that she had that was really new enough to sell or do anything with was a vacuum that she had just bought. So I picked up her vacuum and threw it on my shoulder and pedal biked it right over to the pawn shop. Sold for $20. I don't know what she bought it for, but it was worth $20 that day. And really didn't think anything about it. I'm riding this bike just hoping that nobody sees me sees me holding this vacuum on my shoulder, because how am I possibly going to explain this to anybody to make it make any kind of sense? And luckily enough that at the time nobody did see me, and I went, and that's really not any kind of an exceptional story. That was just more of another day of the week, but it kind of stands out because that's the kind of thing that turned out to be normal, in a way. It was just it was really whatever it took. It wasn't particularly, morals and things like that. Just kind of slowly went further and further back, because the more drugs you do, the more important they become to do, and then you get stuck in this constant cycle. I could quit if I want to, but I just don't want to, and what's the difference between not wanting to quit and being addicted? It's come to find out it's the same thing, because I couldn't have stopped if I wanted to, but anyway, after that I ended up getting caught. My mom, she found her vacuum, and she said she was either going to call the cops on me again, or I was going to go to rehab. I went to rehab. and stayed for a little bit, and that's where I started to learn about getting clean and staying clean and being clean and all these things. And I got out and went right back to using. Because even though I had all this information, it didn't make me want to stop anymore. You know, and and I continued on for the next 3 years, going as hard as I could. You know, I did drugs every day, you know, or as much as I possibly could. I smoked crack, I stole, I did everything within my power, within my training, as creative as I could be, whatever I could figure out to do, you know, I did to either make money or to get high. And when I'm on my 21st birthday, my aunt, who is now the last person that's related to me that will speak to me, offered to take me to the mall to buy me some clothes for my birthday because, you know, prior to my birthday's on December, just before Christmas, I was banned from Thanksgiving, as well as the previous holidays, and so it was kind of a big thing for her to do that. So we went up to the mall, and I told her I was going to go and look at some stuff on my own, and I took her car and drove down the road, and I was going to just stop in and steal some stuff that I could sell later on at a different place, and got caught. You know, got taken to jail, left her stranded at the mall with no car, not knowing where I was, and and following that, I was all alone, you know, and I thankfully, not really thankfully, but I managed to make up a good enough lie to get them to come and bail me out because I didn't want to tell them I got caught stealing, so I told them I had some tickets somewhere, and then once they got me out, they ended up finding out and told the rest of my family, and at this time, I was staying at my grandma's house who had passed away, and I remember that I spent that Christmas all by myself, you know, because those were the kind of things I did every day, you know, and it's funny because I remember sitting there and I was just by myself every day. I had no car, no job, I had no license, I had nothing. I just kind of sat there every day, and it was like this is all of this just to have fun. You know, and here I am with no one to talk to, no one that'll even speak to me. I'm sick to death. I have nothing. And that's really was my whole goal. I just wanted to have a good time. You know, never in my life did I plan on becoming a drug addict. You know, nor was it even a thought. You know, I just wanted to feel good. You know, and I did my best to try and do that. You know, and then it ended up taking me to where it took me to, and. Thankfully enough, I was able to get clean. You know, sometime after that. It sucks. I've spent Christmas in jail, and that sucks. But spending Christmas free and feeling like you're in jail sucks a whole lot more. You know, and but if it weren't for these events, I probably never would have stopped. You know, if somebody would have still been there to clean up my mess or to to take care of me, or just to give me that next shot, or that next $20, or that whatever, then I'd have went forever. And and luckily enough, I went through the things I did to make it so I could be where I am. Okay, that's all I got.
Is there anybody that has any questions for Brandon before he sits down? Yes. Wait just a minute. Okay.
You take opiates because they go through your system faster than other drugs, so that it's less likely that they'll come up in the testing?
I did opiates because I wasn't getting drug tested for opiates. You know, so it was just kind of like a free pass. I looked at it as, and then opiates being the way they are, you know, they make you feel very good and very calm and relaxed, and you can take on anything. But they're also, very addictive. You know, not just mentally, but physically. So it makes it extremely hard to stop doing it because you get very ill if you don't take them. So.
Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah.
Got another question.
Okay.
Like very, very close to you.
What about psychedelics?
What did you say? I'm sorry, I didn't hear
What
you.
about psychedelics? What about psychedelics?
Psychedelics. I've done a lot of I've done, well, everything as far as I know. Um, I've done mushrooms and acid and ecstasy, and I've even done mescaline. And I don't know. I don't know to say to that. You know, I mean, it all leads you to the same place. You know. So whether it's opiates, whether it's crack, whether it's psychedelics, you know, it's one more thing taking you in the wrong direction.
Thank you, Brandon. No young person wakes up in the morning and says, guess what I want to do with my life? I want to be a heroin addict. But it's a sequence of events that leads in that direction. And once they're there, it's so far gone that they can't stop. And it's a disease, and we need to start looking at it as it's a disease. We would never deny somebody treatment if they had cancer or if they had diabetes. And people always say to me, well, yeah, but people didn't choose to get those. And I would differ with you. There are plenty of people that smoke cigarettes and get cancer as a result of it. And yet when they go into the hospital, we don't say we're not treating you because you smoke cigarettes. They can go back, have all kinds of lung problems, get treatment for it, go back to the hospital a second time, and we still treat them again. Addiction is the only disease that we discriminate again, and we're hoping that by raising awareness that will end. Cody has a very different story, and I'll make some comments about it afterwards, but Cody comes from a very different background than Brandon did, and got addicted for very different reasons. So Cody, with that being said, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Linda. And I am Cody, and I'm a heroin addict. I do have a little bit of a different story. I come from a pretty well-off family down in Monroe. Good kid, good in school, honor roll most of my life. Was huge into soccer and into track and sports. In the 8th grade, I already basically was on track for scholarships for running cross country. When it came into high school, I was already basically being offered scholarships to play anywhere in Michigan, soccer, and everything was, pretty good. Life was great. My parents thought nothing of it, and like I said, basic good childhood, no really bad memories that stick out. But the one different thing that it was I had a lot of injuries through all the sports I was playing, and I remember in 8th grade was the first time I'd gotten pushed into a soccer post and basically prescribed Vicodin for quite an extended period of time, and thought nothing of it. My parents regulated it. They gave me the pills as prescribed. Nothing was out of the ordinary, but I was going to school intoxicated. Now looking back, it was probably much longer than what I needed it for, and then I just stopped, and I stopped when the pills ran out, nothing of it. My sophomore year of high school, I was burned really badly on my arms and my face, 3rd and 2nd degrees. You can't really see it, but prescribed the morphine, which is up from Vicodin, and every day being shot up with morphine before high school for a couple weeks, and same thing, after that was over with, I stopped, and then I'm back to playing soccer. And at this time, the summer of my sophomore year, I went over to Europe, and I'd been all over the country to play. I'd played a little bit in Korea, then I went to London and Scotland, and played over there in a couple tournaments. And, that was the first time I'd ever experienced what it's like to go through withdrawal. I didn't have my doctors, I didn't have my painkillers, and I was sick. And my justification and what I thought at the time, because I didn't really know much about it, was it's because of the food. Different country, that's why I'm getting sick, I don't understand it. And so I played it off like that. Now looking back, the first thing I did when I went and got off the plane is went right to my painkillers. Well, after my prescriptions ran out, it was basically now what? It was either be sick or, take more painkillers, go back to what I know. And, it was like clockwork. Somebody that day had came up and asked me, would you want to try Oxycontin? Well, yeah, I mean, I had already lost my fear. I had no fear of it. I'd been taking them for a long period of time. My doctors had given them to me. So I had no fear of the initial, buying it the first time and, ingesting it. And I did, and I was fine for a while. But like the disease, it progressively gets worse. And, it changes you as a person. OxyContin's much stronger. Now it started to be an everyday habit, 1 to 2 pills, and then it skyrocketed. I mean, within a short period of time, by my sophomore year, I had scholarship offers. By my junior year, I had a drug suspension, and schools wanted nothing to do with me. Basically, lost interest, went on to the next kid, and because I was an embarrassment, because that was the first time my junior year, because of this double lifestyle that I was living. My parents had no idea. My friends and family knew very little, and I was actually going, after soccer and school, down to go basically cop my drugs or get my drugs, and eventually caught up with me, like guilt and that shame of, I was this kid that everybody talked about. He was such a good kid, such a good soccer star, all this. I didn't want to live with myself anymore. That was the first time I tried to take my own life. Wrote the note, everything went along, and my parents found me blue on my bed, not breathing, and called the ambulance, and, my parents were actually giving me mouth to mouth, and the EMT came and they revived me, and basically, and when you're under the age of 17 or 18, I believe at the time, you have to go to a 72-hour evaluation, and treated it like a joke. Said, I could stop if I wanted to. Brandon touched on it, and now that the problem was out, my parents knew, and I just thought it would go away. And my parents definitely wanted to hide it. This great kid, and so let's just act like this never happened deal. And so I talked my way out of I told the doctors what they wanted to hear, the counselors, and I was released before the 72 hours, and got out of it. Like most of my life, my parents or I talked my way out of any type of trouble or situation I'd ever gotten into. Well, like that stopped me for a little bit. It scared me a little bit, but I never really stopped. The behaviors didn't change. Still doing the same thing, still hanging out with the same people, and lost interest in soccer. The thing that I loved most in life, and I strived every day for, didn't even matter. The kids on my team were no longer cool. I didn't want to hang out with them. I was going to go off and do my own thing because now drugs and drinking and alcohol, everything that goes along with it had become more important. And I just caught in that vicious cycle that Brandon touched on. Started getting in trouble, probation. Parents got me out every time. Little petty thefts to support my habit, and just like any other story, the same vicious cycle. I used to say, well, I'm not an addict. An addict is that person living under the bridge, begging for change. I wear nice clothes. I come from a good family. I'm not an addict, and I used to justify that. And truth is, I am an addict, and it kind of happened to anybody. It happened to me, and the thing about it is today, looking back, like I don't regret it. I do keep track of my sobriety date because I'm proud of that sobriety date, and it's an amazing feeling, looking back, the person I was before drugs and alcohol entered my life, I didn't want to care. I didn't want to change, the face of addiction. I didn't care. Today I do. I get fulfillment by coming here, talking about FAN, something that's been a big part of my life, a 12-step program, because yesterday I just celebrated a year of sobriety. And that's an amazing accomplishment coming from a person like me, that had to use every single day. My day, that was a full-time job. How am I going to get high next? Who am I going to rob or steal? What story am I going to tell my parents so they believe me to get me out of trouble? And that's the way I live my life. And today, because of programs, you know, a 12-step program, I don't live my life that way. You know, I try and live for other people and for things that I truly believe in. And, you know, that's such an amazing accomplishment for somebody like me, because at the end of my addiction, I was a low-bottom dope fiend. You know, I was shooting up heroin. I eventually moved on to heroin, and because it was cheaper and more affordable, and because it was just so much easier to get, you know. And you know, I don't really know what else to touch on other than, you know, it's just an honor to be here. I'm just grateful I got this opportunity to talk. That's all I got.
Cody, don't leave. Stay back. They want you to stay up here while we do questions. Are there any questions for Cody? While we're waiting to get the mic, I just want to say that I'm proud of their recovery date too. And even though you can look at it one way of why do you celebrate that date, it also provides hope for other addicts that think they can't stay clean, and they see someone like Cody or Brandon who are struggling, and they think, well, if they did it and they've got a year, I can do that too. So I think there's reasons to celebrate those dates, and we always celebrate those with the kids, and we know they're proud of them as well.
You indicated that at one point in time, although inadvertently, it seemed like you were going to school high every day. Did people confront you, or can you tell other people that they may have that problem? I mean, what do we look for signs of people who might become addicted to Vicodin, either through a doctor's prescription or otherwise? Is that a difficult thing?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's pretty, the obvious symbols to me would be, you know, pinned eyes, lazy eyes, bad eating habits. I didn't eat at all. Rarely. I lost a lot of weight because of it. And I lost interest, like I said, in the things that I loved most, the things that I cared about, you know, family and, you know, all my sports. I didn't care about them anymore. You know, drugs and prescription pills became the most important thing.
Cody, as an addict in recovery, seeing those tables full of drugs, does that give you like thoughts?
No. I work a program, and, you know, because of the abstinence from it, and also the most important thing of working a program, you know, I can see it, and it doesn't bother me, you know, to this day. As of right now. You know, it's a day at a time. But
Yeah, because I know you said you went to many rehabs and really good ones, but I feel like, as my son is an addict too, and went to many different ones, and Hazelton, Watershed, Palm Partners, you have to be ready. It doesn't matter if they're really up high or whatever, they have to do it themselves. I come to find out. Some people don't have the rehabs, some people do, and it has to be themselves.
absolutely.
So congratulations.
Hi, I was wondering if either one of you two took anything like Suboxone in order to make it through your recovery in the beginning.
Yes, I did. I took it during detox, and that's it. Today, I'm fine. You know, I was an everyday heroin addict. I know doctors prescribe it long term, and I don't use anything abstinence through, you know, of all drugs, alcohol, anything. And to me, that's just a maintenance. You know, it's something, a crutch per se. And because of a program, I don't need a crutch.
I also took Suboxone for a while, but my problem with Suboxone was that once I got on it, whenever I tried to get off it, I would go back to doing drugs, and I was never able to make that step because it's like Cody said, it's like a maintenance, you know, the same way that methadone is. You know, you could say it's not high, you're not getting high because it's legal, but then again, you could say the same thing about Vicodin. And either way, you're putting something in your body to change the way you feel, and you have to do it every day. So.
There are obviously lots of different schools of thought on using alternative drugs to treat addiction. For some people it's appropriate, but I will tell you that most of the young people that we work with really are opposed to using any substance to help you get through your addiction other than that initial detox. And at that point, they think that working a program is what you've got to do because you have to learn how to live drug-free without a substance that's helping you. And that's pretty much the attitude of all the young people that we've talked to that are in recovery. Okay, another question.
I have a son coming home from a treatment center in 3 weeks, and one of the main things we want to do is find him a program. He's 16, where he will have people like you and Brandon to mentor him and support him. Are those easy to find? And because we're in this area, and it is a big problem, but since this has been happening, it's not that easy to find help, you know, and good quality help. And
Through my experience, I went to a transitional home, three-quarter house, that got me involved with young people in a 12-step program. But there's 12-step program directories for any local area. If you want to get them going to a certain group, you know, I would strongly recommend that.
Yeah, we do. But I think he'd be comfortable with like younger people, because we.
Yeah, if I can suggest to you, these kids go to a lot of the same meetings, and so if you meet up with them after the group is right, they'll give you the locations where they're going to hook up, and these kids sponsor kids all the time and help them through their addiction. I will tell you that's what works for these kids is they have fun together. A group of us, three of us adults went down to their Easy Paw, which was a convention for young recovering youth, and we saw 700 kids having more fun than you can imagine with no drugs. And it was really a remarkable thing to watch them do, is to have that kind of fun.
He's going to
sober.
meet new friends, new group of people to hang out
Right.
with, and all that. So.
Bring them to FAN, get them connected, and these kids are always there, and they'll connect with them and get them going to meetings with them. So these kids are all about helping people get through this process. They're not really kids, by the way, but they're okay. All right. Okay. Thank you, Cody. Okay. From Cody's speech, what I'd like you to take away, there's a lot of parents here, and we think because doctors prescribe things that means they're okay to take and that it's safe. And you have a voice with your doctor. Understand that there are alternatives to taking Vicodin and OxyContin. There are lots of painkillers on the market that are non-opiates. So if you have a young child and they get a sports injury or they hurt themselves or get burnt, talk to your doctor about a non-opiate prescription. And the other thing to keep in mind is doctors overwrite. They don't want you calling every 5 days asking for more because it's a pain in the neck. But tell them you only want enough to get your child through that initial bad stage if that's what's necessary is an opiate to do that. And if they do overwrite the prescription, after a few days you need to dump those pills and get rid of them. Do not keep them in your house. That's where most kids start their addiction, is right out of your medicine cabinet. So it's really important that you be informed, that you understand what the problems are, and that you not add to that problem by having those drugs available for your young people. Secondly, there are drop places all the time. I know Fraser Police has one, Macomb County Sheriff's, and maybe you can tell us if there's anything in Oakland County, but you can actually take your pills and dispense of them safely. Fraser, in a one-week period of time, collected over 100 pounds of unused narcotics. That shows you how doctors are over-prescribing. That kind of a thing should not be happening. So we need to educate not only parents and kids, but we also need to educate doctors in what they're doing and how they're adding to this problem. One of the interesting things about addiction is back when I was a kid, it was always guys that were addicts, never girls. And that has changed drastically. As a judge, I see all the time that we are seeing an increasing number of young women that are coming through. And I've actually been tracking it. And it's about 2/3 guys to 1/3 girls right now. So we also want to see the other side of that. So we've asked some young ladies to come and talk to us tonight as well. And Emily is going to be our first speaker.
Hi, I'm Emily, and I'm an addict.
Hi, Emily.
And by the grace of God, today I have a little over 2.5 years sober. My sobriety date is November 21st, 2008, and I am 19 years old. I guess I'll start my childhood. You know, growing up, I lived in Detroit. My family wasn't very wealthy. Both my parents were in school for a long time when I was a child. So, you know, they had very little time to work. And my dad, growing up, was an alcoholic, and my mom was a cocaine addict as well. So that dipped into funds a lot too, you know. And they were always, they were dealing drugs out of the house. So growing up, you know, there was always drugs around me, you know, and they kind of, you know, they would, I knew what was going on, but I didn't know what was going on because I was so young, you know. At the age of 5, I kind of totally knew what was up, but they still couldn't admit it to me, you know, and I didn't really know what drugs were, you know, but I knew they were bad, and I saw how my parents acted when they were on them, and, you know, I told myself as a child I never wanted to be like that. You know, I had dreams of growing up and having a family, and I wanted to live in a big house. You know, I was going to go to school and, you know, get a great job and be able to give my children everything they wanted, because I remember growing up I'd ask for things and I could never have them because they never had the money for it, you know, between booze and cocaine and school and all that. So, you know, I always promised myself that I would never be like my parents. And, you know, I had my first taste of beer when I was, I believe I was 6. You know, as a child, my dad was, you know, always drinking beer, Bush, and, you know, some of it spilled on me, and it smelled awful. I remember it smelling awful, and I'm like, you know, Dad, what the heck? You know what I mean? You spilled beer on me. And he was like, well, lick it up. So I tasted it, you know. And I was like, oh, it tastes awful. But, you know, he had all his buddies over, and they were all drinking beer. And, you know, I sipped a little more his and a little more his. And, you know, before I knew it, you know what I mean? Like, I felt weird, you know what I'm saying? And I didn't know what was going on. I never knew that that's exactly what would happen to me. And, I really didn't like it. I really didn't. I remember thinking it was gross, but I wanted to be just like my dad, because my dad was so cool and he had all these friends, you know. And I didn't touch it again. You know, I never went back to it because I just wasn't for me. I was a little kid and it tasted nasty and it smelled gross and I felt funny. And so I grew up, you know, still feeling out of place. You know, we're one of the only white families on the block, and, you know, a lot of the kids didn't want to hang out with me. They thought I was different. Not that race has ever been an issue with me, you know, but they all thought I was different. And we finally moved to Grosse Pointe. My parents, they kicked their addictions for a little while, and they got good jobs, and we moved to Grosse Pointe. And moving into Grosse Pointe, I also felt like I didn't fit in. I was from Detroit, you know what I mean? All these people grew up with money, and I didn't. You know, they all had Abercrombie and Lacoste and, you know, all these name brand things, and I was like in a Walmart t-shirt, like, what's up? And I just didn't fit in, you know, and none of them really accepted me, or so I felt. You know, I always felt outcasted no matter where I was. And finally, this girl named Katie befriended me, and I remember that was 7th grade, and we started hanging out. I was at her house all the time, and her dad, true alcoholic, he drank and drank and drank, and we wanted to be like him. And they had a full bar in their living room, and they'd go to bed, and you know, we were like, oh, well, they did shots at dinner, so now it's our turn, you know. And, you know, every weekend we'd get a little messed up, you know, get a good buzz going and just not feel the way we were feeling, and I loved it. I loved not feeling like me, and that's when it all started. And, you know, soon we started going to parties together, smoked weed, and I drank and smoked weed for, you know, about a year, and then all of a sudden I loved it. You know, sometimes, you know, I'd black out and I didn't even remember, and that was even better. If I can remember not feeling like me, then that's fantastic, because I didn't like myself, I didn't fit in. And, you know, that slowly progressed for a little while, you know, started smoking weed, and then I started taking pills, and the pills were phenomenal. I didn't care what it was, you know, if it was, you know, speed or ecstasy or Vicodins or whatever. I was just like, gimme, 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 because I've taken pills my whole life. You know, you get sick, you go to the doctor, they give you a pill. I thought it was okay. You know what I mean? I'm like, I take pills when I'm sick all the time, and you know what I mean? Like, it's no big deal. Just put it in your mouth and swallow. It's not like I'm shooting anything up, you know what I mean? I'll never do that, you know, and I'll never do cocaine like my mom. Well, I did cocaine like my mom, you know, and it just slowly progressed. And before I got into high school, I had already done heroin for my first time, and I remember we were going to the movies, and I was with an older group of guys, and I know they all just were trying to, you know, be my boyfriends or get in my pants or whatever, and they were all on some kind of drugs, and then they finally told me, they were like, we're going to go get some more of whatever we're on, you want some? And I looked at their faces, and they weren't there, you know what I mean? Like, they were there, but they weren't there, and they were so calm, and I remember always feeling so jittery, and, you know, like, I don't fit in, I got to do this, I got to do that. I was constantly, I felt like running in place, you know, trying to be somebody I wasn't, you know, just fit in. I just wanted to be relaxed. I just wanted to feel calm, and, you know, they went and they got the heroin, and I snorted it. For the first 6 months I did it, and it was great. I did it, and I felt so at peace, you know what I mean? I just felt so calm, and life was good. You know, I fit in with these guys. They were older, so it made me look cool at school. You know, you're hanging out with all the older kids, and, you know, they still partied and everything, and, you know, they didn't do heroin all the time, apparently. They just, you know, did every once in a while, and after I found out where the spot was, I could go get it. The next day, I took one of my friends there, and I was like, yeah, let's go get some of this stuff. I'll buy you some weed. And then so it, you know, progressed and progressed. And, you know, I was doing it every weekend, and then I started doing it, you know, like, I don't know, like Friday through Tuesday, and then it got, you know, more and more and more days of the week until the whole week was filled up. And I remember after a while, somebody said to me, why do you snort that stuff? If you shoot it, you get high way better and way faster. And I was like, stick a needle in me? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a doctor. I don't do that stuff. And I did. I tried it out. They shot up for me, and I remember it was like the most amazing feeling I had had at that point in my life. I just felt relieved, you know? And after I learned how to do it myself, it just became easier and easier. And by the time I was 16 years old, I was engaged to my boyfriend, who became a drug dealer. I don't know which happened first, but it worked out great, you know what I mean? My fiance deals drugs, and, you know, we're going to get our own house, which ended up being the dope house. So before you knew it, my family hated me. They didn't want to talk to me. They realized what was going on. You know, I did track, and in middle school, and they wanted me to pursue that and just do something with my life, and I was getting, you know, really bad grades, and they were so disappointed in me. And I remember I just felt like, why sit around and, you know, disappoint my family when I can go be somewhere else? You know, I just felt like such a failure there. And when I went to the dope house, I was like with people that were like me, you know, like they did the things I did, and, you know, they shot dope. And so I was engaged to my drug dealer pretty much, and I was shooting up dope every day, selling it, and before you knew it, they got crack into the dope house, and I smoked crack once for 2 years. Like, let's just put it that way. It just consumes you, and my family stopped answering my phone calls. I would call them and say, hey, Mom, you know, could you give me some money? You know, I ran out of gas or something. And, you know, I didn't mean to be disrespectful when I laughed at Brandon's story about the vacuum and the bike, but I totally relate because I've been there. You know, I remember being, you know, breaking into my parents' house and stealing whatever I could. Like, I remember one time I walked out of there with my little sister's electronic keyboard and was just walking down the street with it. Like, so I totally relate. And, you know, and I look back at my life, you know, and how fast all of this had happened. You know, I went from having a drink to being a crackhead, like, so quickly. And I never thought I'd be that way. And no one wanted to talk to me. All my friends at school that thought I was cool stopped thinking I was cool because I wouldn't show up to school anymore. They'd be like, "What's wrong with you?" They'd worry about me and everything, and I'd pretty much tell them to screw off. You know, I didn't want anything to do with them because they weren't like me. They made me feel more uncomfortable. And I guess my little sister is part of the reason that I got sober, I would say, because she wrote me a letter. It's called My Incredible Sister. And I remember she sent it to me in the mail, and she didn't have the dope house's address, obviously, so it got returned back. And it was sitting on the kitchen table of my parents' house, and I read it, and when I was going to steal stuff from them. I broke into their house to steal stuff from them, and I read it. And I acted like I didn't read it, obviously. I didn't tell her I read it. And it was just talked about how wonderful I used to be, how awesome I was before I started doing drugs. And, you know, that really hit home with me about how badly I've changed. The disease consumes you when you become this person you never wanted to be or you never thought you would become, you know. And it's so hard to quit. I remember trying to quit shooting dope so many times, and you know, it always ended the same way, shooting more dope. And I never thought I'd get out of it. And finally, the pain became great enough, and my drug dealer slash fiance got thrown in jail, and he owed the dope house money, so I couldn't go there. And he wasn't selling dope, so he couldn't give me any. So I was dope sick, and you know, I tried to get drunk, and it still didn't work out. I just ended up puking more, and you know, I was just so sick and tired of constantly having to run, constantly having to, you know, steal to get what I want, you know, lie to. I had a job. I worked at a Quiznos, and I would not show up, and if I did show up, you know, I was throwing up in a garbage can because the smell of the food would make me sick every time I was high for some reason. And I have no idea how I was still employed there. And I was just sick and tired of constantly trying to live my life around getting the next one. I wanted to be free. I felt so imprisoned. And I finally went to rehab halfway through my senior year of high school. And you know, I was introduced to the 12-step program when I was 15, but I walked into the room and I thought it was all older people. I was like, I don't belong here, so I went back out. And then I was 17, 3 days after I turned 17, I went to rehab. And, you know, I hated it. I absolutely hated it because I had to get honest for the first time in my life. I was constantly living a lie. I was constantly telling everybody, you know, where I was, and you know, or telling them I was somewhere I wasn't, doing things that I wasn't doing, you know, and I wanted to be accountable, but I never was. And I finally gained those things in rehab. I got honest with myself and with other people about what I was doing and my behaviors, and I started to get that free feeling back. And I got out of rehab, and I started going to meetings every day. And today, my life is wonderful. You know, the cravings become few and far between. And, you know, working these 12 steps is the best thing that's ever happened to me. You know, my life is a joy today. And it's an honor that I can come here and talk to everybody and be able to stand here and say that I have, you know, 2 years sober, you know what I mean? Because I never thought I could. I never thought I'd become an addict. And then when I became an addict, I never thought I could get clean. And I can with the grace of a higher power in the 12-step program. So I'm just grateful to be here. Thank you for listening.
Good job. Awesome job.
Thank you.
Any questions for Emily? Okay. See, you covered it all. Okay. All right. Good job.
Linda, we have one question.
Oh, wait. We have a question. come back.
Did your sister write a letter to your parents? Are they clean?
My dad now has a year and 2 months sober, and my mom still thinks she can pick up and not pick up whenever she feels like it. But no, she did not write a letter to them. But my dad saw my recovery in me, and I helped, show him where meetings are, and he credits a little bit to me. I can't take credit for it all, obviously, but.
That's great.
Thank you, Emily. Emily brought up an important point. People ask me all the time, and I could write a thesis about this, but I'll try to keep it short. Why do kids think it's okay to get into this? I mean, why do they get started and everything? And one of the things I always tell them is we desensitize kids right from the get-go about addiction. A lot of parents think it's cute to give their small child alcohol to drink. We condone that, have a glass of wine with us, have a beer here and there. And we really make it okay to use illegal substances. And I always say to parents that come into my court and say, well, he was with me when he was drinking. And I said, well, then there's too bad it's not a law that I can put you in jail too, because I would if I could. And the reason for that is because we as adults need to set a standard for our children, and we don't do that. We tell them it's okay. And I always use the analogy that you would never take your child into a store and say, here, why don't you steal this candy bar off the shelf? And people will say, well, of course I wouldn't do that. But you are giving them an illegal substance, and it is exactly the same penalty. They both are 93-day misdemeanors, but you're making one of those 93-day misdemeanors okay, and the other misdemeanor you're saying you'd never do. So we need to rethink what we do with our children and what we teach them when we do those kind of actions in front of them, and encourage them to start drinking at young ages. The younger kids start drinking, the more chance they have of becoming addicts, and so we need to re-educate parents about what's appropriate behavior with their children as well. With that being said, we'll bring up Ashley to speak next.
Hi, I'm Ashley, and I'm an addict.
Hi, Ashley.
I guess I'll start with my childhood. My dad is also an addict. My mom and dad had me at a very, very young age. My mom divorced my dad due to his addiction and moved us to St. Clair Shores at a young age. And my grandparents became like my parents. My mom was young and she drank, and my dad wasn't around. I was in all kinds of sports. As a young child, I was captain of the cheerleading team. I played softball, the All-Star. In 6th, 7th grade, I started smoking weed and drinking, thinking it was a party and fun, and all my friends were doing it, and it was the cool thing to do. I loved to numb that pain so much that by 9th grade, I was addicted to crack cocaine. And I admitted to my mom for the first time that I had a problem, and she took me to a IOP, an outpatient treatment center, where they treated me, and I thought that if I stopped smoking crack and continued to smoke weed, I would be okay. She would send me to a 12-step program at 14, and I was there walking the halls one day, and I ran into this man, and this man happened to be my father, and he was clean. And I had my whole family at this point wrapped around my finger, and they gave me whatever I wanted, enabled me to the fullest. And my dad was the only one to stand up and say to me and them that she's suffering from an addiction and there's a demon inside of her that you guys don't understand. So from that point, I didn't want anything to do with my father because he knew the truth, the same truth I knew, and I didn't want him to let the secret out. So I pushed him away. I pushed my family away. I got engaged. By 16, I was pregnant. I got clean for 10 months as soon as my son was born. I was back to using again, except now it was a whole new ball game. Now I was taking ecstasy, smoking weed, drinking on a regular basis. I didn't get through high school the first time. I got clean in 2006 because I caught a case of 75 pills of ecstasy. I did 2.5 years of felony probation, and I stayed clean for most of the time. I would take drugs that you couldn't see on drug tests at the end, and I eventually went back out. After that, I started taking Vicodin and Oxys on a regular basis. I worked 2 jobs to support a habit, and that turned into a $650 a week habit really quick. And I hated myself at the end. There were days I would wake up knowing exactly what I was going to do and hating myself for doing it and doing it anyways. And at this point, I didn't have any family in my life. My son was out of my life. I didn't have anybody, and I hated myself and didn't know who I was at all. I took my mom's wedding ring and I pawned it. I broke into her house and took the ring and pawned it. And I got put on probation, and I turned myself in for a warrant. And at that point, I was like begging for help. That was my cry for help right there. I'd never been to a treatment center at this point, and I met a probation officer in Macomb County, and her name is Bree, and she kind of saved my life. She sent me to a treatment center for 8 months. I did 8 months there, and it was the most amazing thing ever. I learned all kinds of things about myself. I got out of the treatment center. I've been reunited with my family and my child. Today, my dad has 9 years clean, and I have 16 months. I went back to school and I got a high school diploma. I currently have a full-time job. I love being in recovery. It's an honor to be here. And I remember when I first got clean, I would pray that there would be something that I could do to tell other people to save them, because I've lost a lot of friends to this disease. And when Jeremy asked me to do this today, like, that was my answer. So I'm grateful to be here. Thanks.
Ashley also has spoken in my drug court and did an excellent job. And I don't know if you know the kind of courage it takes to stand up here and talk like these young people are doing, but I just think it's pretty remarkable that you've come this far and that you're willing to share your story with us. So
Thank
you.
Linda.
Okay. Any questions for Ashley? Okay. No? Okay. Good job. Okay, Jeremiah is going to be our next speaker and the last of our young recovering youth, and then we have 2 parents that are going to speak to you as well. I kind of handpicked the kids that were going to speak so that they would all come from different backgrounds. You've heard one person that got addicted because of a sports injury and became an addict, another person who came from a very low-income family whose parents were addicts. You've heard girls that have shared those stories as well. And Jeremy's story is a little bit different as well. Jeremy comes to us and is one of our beloved beginning kids that started FAN with us and is very special to all of us. And his brother is one of the reasons that FAN exists today, and I'll let him tell you more about that. Jeremy?
My name is Jeremiah, and I'm a grateful recovering addict and alcoholic.
Hi, Jeremiah. Okay.
It's always an honor and a privilege to be able to speak and ask any organization. I didn't pay attention.
Okay, now it's on. Okay.
Like usual. My name is Jeremiah, and I'm a grateful recovering addict and alcoholic. I firmly believe in the 12 steps of recovery, and I am a follower of Jesus Christ.
Hi, Jeremiah.
Thank you. No applause needed.
Okay.
It all started at a young age with me, well before I ever got introduced to drugs and alcohol. I was raised in a very a healthy home. I had everything I needed. It was the cool place to hang out. We had the pool, the trampoline. We had everything. Everything I wanted my whole life growing up, I had. And I had this sense of this void inside me to where I always had to do something, act out, be the class clown, go above and beyond you to make myself separate, because I always wanted to feel like I was different, because that's how I felt inside. So I did whatever it took, no matter the consequences, to make myself stand out. And I always used things outside of me to make myself feel joy. And I was always raised to where, you go to church and you pray and you don't sin, and you have love for your family, and somewhere along the lines, my thought process started messing things up. My thoughts coming into my brain were a little bit differently and disturbed than the average human being, come to find out. I thought it was normal thinking because nobody can get inside my brain. So when I thought it was okay in 4th grade to do somersaults in the quad at Dooley Elementary, that's what I thought was okay. I didn't know no better. Even though my parents raised me to know better, it just something got disturbed along the way. And I remember they put me, and I kept getting in trouble, and the principal and the teachers kept calling my parents and saying, hey, this is what you need to do, and they got to come meet with them. And they're like, okay. Then they put me in this room, and I remember it. And they had this little picnic table, a little Fisher-Price thing, and they were watching me play through glass. And I'm like, okay, whatever, this is weird, but I've been in weird situations, and I got out, and I remember them talking, and they're like, here, you need to take this pill. And I was like, oh, okay. And I took the pill like I took my vitamins every morning, my little Flintstone vitamins, and it took away my appetite, and it gave me cotton mouth, and it made me feel real weird, and it was Ritalin. And I remember behaving myself to where it was the point where I lost my appetite, and it made me feel like a monster, like a robot almost. But I quit doing somersaults. I got good grades, and people were proud of me. And I started getting attention in the positive light. And that's what I was shooting for. I just wanted your attention, because I didn't feel good about myself, so I did whatever it took to get your attention. So life started going pretty well, 4th, 6th, 9th, it got through, and I decided, take it through junior high. And then when I got in high school, I decided I wasn't going to take it anymore. And my freshman year of high school, I failed 9 classes. And then the chaos began through my sophomore year. I failed 7 classes. And I could never connect the dots. My sister was a senior. I always wanted to be like her. She was my idol, and I just wanted to be who she was. She was on the honor roll, the honor society. I mean, she had it going on, and she had friends, and I wanted that. So I picked people that would accept me into their lives, and those people were smoking pot and drinking on a daily basis. And I was a weekend warrior. I party, and I just bring it into the week. And I thought you guys were weird when you didn't party, on every other day, and I got to feel normal on the weekends, and I got introduced to, other prescription pills, and I never had an issue with any of these pills. I took a few pills here and there, smoked a little weed. It was what I thought was a normal high school career. And when they told me I had to go to summer school for my last 3 years of high school, and I had to go to night school so I can graduate on time, I didn't like that. So I talked to my mom, and they had this new pill at the time. It was called Adderall. And when I was going into my second sophomore year of high school, I started taking Adderall. And at Fraser High School, they had this program called Career Prep Center, and they allowed me to leave school at 10:30 every morning. And I would leave Fraser, and I would go work on cars. And I was so hyperactive that's really what I needed. And nevertheless, with the Adderall, I finished high school on the AB honor roll my second 2 years of high school. And I didn't really have a problem with drugs and alcohol during my high school years. I was able to party on the weekends, and then function and got good grades, and I made people happy and proud, and people wanted to be around me. And then my parents got a divorce my senior year, and I started heavily drinking, and I got into alcohol, and I started drinking on a daily basis. And it was right after high school. The divorce was real ugly. Right after high school, I quit talking to my mother, and right after high school, I got a job. I got a great job. I was going to Macomb College. I was living the dream. I mean, I was making more money than I could spend, and a guy that I was working with was doing OxyContin. And I remember I got in a fight in high school, and I remember what Percocet did to me when I took them. And I remember that buzz, that feeling. And somebody's like, hey, bro, you ever take Vicodin? I'm like, yeah, I've tried it. And he gave me an Oxycontin. And it was after work, and we did it, and we got these little mopeds, and we were driving around, and we were high as kites, and I thought I was living the life. It wasn't until about 6 or 7 months later, this was immediately following high school, that I realized I had a girlfriend at the time, pretty serious. She took place of my mother. She gave me that nurturing love that I needed, or I thought I needed. And I looked at her and I said, I'm addicted to Oxycontin. And I had no clue. I was extremely sick, and I had nowhere to turn. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know there was meetings and 12-step programs, and I didn't know there was people like me, nor did I care. I didn't want to stop using. I was having fun still. And you know, through a series of rehab centers and getting back into my mother's life, you know, I found it to be a lot cheaper after I lost that great job to start doing heroin. And when I got introduced to heroin, it was about a week of snorting heroin until I started injecting it. And that was pretty much all she wrote. 3 treatment centers later, I finally had the willingness to get on my knees and pray to some God. I didn't know who it was or what it was, to come into my life and to just stop the chaos. I couldn't live that way anymore. I was killing myself and I was dying. And somebody answered. And that obsession to use was lifted. And it was a feeling like I'd never felt before. And I got out and I started going to several 12-step meetings a day. And I started getting my life back together. I got a couple cars. I decided to get a couple cars before I got my license back. It made more sense to me. Like I said, my thoughts were a little broken. And then they picked me up. Actually, 2 of the cops out there both have arrested me. You know, my thought process wasn't there. And guys, I knew, and this is the power of this disease that I used to suffer from. This disease is progressive, incurable, and fatal, and it doesn't care who you are. And I knew at the depth of my soul that I would never get high again. I knew it. You couldn't tell me any other way. I knew that I was never going to get high again. And I had a day shy of 8 months clean, and it was actually Ashley's boyfriend at the time. And we were driving down Jefferson Avenue, and he said, do you want to get high? And I said, yeah. And we were driving to the dope house, and I said, you know, statistically, one of us is going to continue to get high. And it ain't going to be me. And we look at each other. I said, are you going to change your clean date? And he said, nope. I said, me neither. And we just kept going. Under this delusion, this delusion that my disease plays games on me and tells me that I could get high once. And that's what killed my little brother. That illusion that I can use but one more time, man. And you know, this is a daily reprieve contingent on my spiritual condition and my maintenance. What am I going to do on a daily basis to combat this disease? You know, I've been around here for what I consider a pretty long time. But I know for me what I have to do in my life is so much farther. Like the Suboxone will get you, I believe, this is my belief, 3 days, no more Suboxone. That's just my belief. That's what I did. I detoxed off it. My mother took me to 4 different doctors to get Suboxone and to try to do what she could to help me. And when I decided to go back to treatment, I didn't want to go back. I was living this life that I thought I had, you know. And my fiance now, she came over and she put a drug test on the table and she said, my dad wants you to take this. And well, it wasn't very pretty. But long story short, I failed 5 out of 7. And all else I was doing was smoking weed and shooting heroin. And 5 out of 7, whatever it was cut with. But I ended up going back into an inpatient treatment center. It was my 5th treatment center. And I've never been so sick in my entire life. At this point, I had a couple $100 a day habit. And the reason I had such a high habit was because I was taking 16 milligrams of Suboxone every morning. Because I knew if I stopped that I could stay stopped because I did it before. I knew once the chaos was stopped, I could just be done with it. And you know, when I was taking the Suboxone every morning, and then I immediately went to the dope house after one thing went wrong, and I shot dope on top of it for the rest of the day. Projectile vomiting, 165 pounds when I went into treatment center, and I thought I had life going on. And then I said, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? If I was 20 years old, going into a rehab center, what am I going to do with my life? You're telling me I can never drink and drug ever again? I'd rather die. I'm not going to do that. What was it? And the delusion is, think about it. I was doing nothing but lying, cheating, stealing, shooting heroin, and I thought I had a life. I really thought for a minute I was going to miss out on something. My disease doesn't take me to where I was at the end of my using career. My disease doesn't take me there. It takes me back to where I was having fun, driving around with Will in a car, smoking cigarettes, snorting pills. That's where my mind wants to take me. It wants to entertain the ideas. And that delusion has to be squashed. It really does. I know today, just for today, that I can't get high. From the time I get up in the morning, I get on my knees, and I ask God to come into my life, show me a new way to live. What I do is not working. You have to come in. You have to show me how to live, God. And now I have to do, by saying that prayer, I have to act a certain way by saying that prayer. I can't no longer do this and then go steal from that person and go lie to you over there. I have to live a certain way. I have a set of spiritual principles in my life today that I never thought were possible, ever. And I live a life today that I couldn't have dreamed of. I truly do. And it has nothing to do with me. And that's what the cool twist about it is. You know what I did? I just show up. I put my clothes on in the morning, and I go to work, and I give it 100%. I don't get high in between when I wake up and I go to sleep, and my life continues to get better. And for me to say that I've done something is ludicrous. My Creator came into my life and allows me to live under a certain set of principles and through certain people around me that just... The fact of getting high doesn't come into my mind. The obsession to use has been lifted. The phenomenon of craving no longer comes into my life. My life doesn't evolve around drugs and alcohol anymore. You know, it revolves around helping people and to achieve sobriety. I mean, that's our common goal. Like the FAN's got its purposes. 12-step programs have their purpose. As long as we're going to keep coming together and helping people and influencing the way legislation, passes with the prescription drugs, or continuing to have new people come into my life and just to be an instrument and to be a tool is one of the coolest things I've ever thought I could do. I mean, and the fact of being a hopeless dope fiend that I was, to being a hope fiend now, it's forget about it. And as long as I stay humble, I can continue to be on this journey. I hope and I pray, and I'll get on my knees tonight. And I was just baptized this last week, and it feels good. I got to do it holding my fiance's hand, and Steve and Sandy Buckner right here are the ones that actually got to dunk us, and what a good feeling. And I would never been able to experience any of this if I wouldn't have thought that this was possible. And I'm a firm believer. When that guy said that about the clean day, I have a hard time sometimes thinking about when I clean. I got to think about it. I'm like, and it doesn't create any importance. Really, the date itself and the significance, but I look at it as a day that I turn my life around, a day that I changed who I am and what I do, and I'll never, ever forget the pain that I went through. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget. I hope, I should say, that I'll never forget it. I apologize. My ego gets in there sometimes, but it's about ego deflation for me today, and what can I do to better serve somebody else and get myself out of the way. And I'm not capable of doing that on my own, as some of these guys will contest. So, but I appreciate you guys letting us come up here and share a little bit of our stories with you, and I'm sure a few of us will hang out afterwards to answer any questions.
Jeremy didn't talk about it much, but when FAN started, we started because we'd lost several young kids in our surrounding area, and Jeremy's brother was one of those young kids. He was 18 years old when he passed, and we just thank God that Jeremy has turned his life around, because he's been a real blessing to all of us. So Jeremy, thank you so much. Don't leave. Okay. Are there any questions for Jeremy before he sits down?
Hi, Jeremy.
Hello.
Okay. Do you think, you had mentioned the Ritalin and the Adderall. I've been told some people feel like that had started the feeling of wanting to pursue testing other drugs. Do you feel that way? Do you feel like it played a part in your...
I believe a lot of what I do now, and as the farther back I look, a lot of what I do is a subconscious act. And I knew when I took that, and both the drugs, Adderall and Ritalin, and Oxycontin, they're all controlled substances, and they can change the way your emotion and your feelings are. And subconsciously, I know it had something to do with it, absolutely. Now, would I became an addict or strung out on drugs without it? Most likely. I mean, I remember crying when we were leaving Taco Bell because my mom told me I wasn't getting this RC car, and I had to have it because it was going to change me and my being, and it was going to change my character. I had to have it. And it was just a trait that I had. So, no, I don't. Is it direct connection? Maybe, yeah, I guess so.
It's an important question, and I just want to add to that. We live in a society, I'm much older than Jeremy, but when I was a young kid, we had a gas station on every store, on every corner. Now we have a pharmacy on every corner. And we live in a world where we as adults are teaching kids that we are not to feel any pain. We're not supposed to go through any discomfort. And the pharmaceutical companies spend a lot of money every year convincing us of that. 7 out of every 10 commercials on TV right now are drug-related commercials where butterflies are floating through fields and telling us that's what we're supposed to feel like, and that we're not ever supposed to feel pain or go through hard times, that we can drug ourselves to get through that. And we are creating an attitude among our young people that you can fix everything with a pill, and then we question, well, why do they turn to pills? So we, once again, need to think the way we think as adults and realize that a little bit of pain might be a good thing sometimes, and that we don't have to go through life pain-free and feeling-free, that is part of life. It's got ups and downs, and part of living is learning how to deal with those ups and downs, which is exactly what these kids are doing through their recovery programs. Jeremy and I talk a lot, and we know we have ups and downs, and they find a new way by turning to a higher power to get through those. Some of the kids here tonight are Kensington kids. Jeremy goes to Kensington, Brandon goes to Kensington, and I'm very proud to say that I'm the one that introduced them because I also go to Kensington. So it's been a great place for me to deal with issues that I've had in my life. I know that it's been great for Brandon and Jeremy as well. And there's Celebrate Recovery here, which is a recovery group that's within Kensington Church. So they're definitely geared in the right direction to help young people. And I'm just really proud of the fact that they're here with me tonight. Thank you, Jeremy. Oh, I'm sorry, another question.
Oh, that's okay, Linda.
Okay.
It's not so much a question as a comment I'd like to say to Jeremiah. I really liked the comment you made about not being a dope fiend and being a hope fiend. That was really good. And I know there's probably some parents in here that are, dealing with it with their children and stuff. And I know that one of the hardest things, in recovery and to get through it is being alone and dealing with that. And you have to remember as a parent that you have to, be there for them, and it's about unity. And something to say to them is that you're there for them. And the first 3 letters of that word is the most important thing. You and I. That's all.
Thank you. Anything else before one more question, Jeremy.
Might be a little bit of an unfair question, but all of you seem to say that if you wanted heroin, it's available. Is there something that we in law enforcement can do, in your opinion, to eliminate the supply, or do we just have to have people not crave it anymore? I'm struggling with that every day, trying to figure out how the solution to this problem. Do you have an opinion?
Yeah, of course I got an opinion on it, but...
Jeremy has opinions on everything.
Yeah, no, I know law enforcement. I have several friends that are police officers, and I know that their heart's into this, and And maybe if you built like an invisible fence down 8 Mile, we might be able to keep some of it out. And then we just go to Flint to get it. I mean, you can't. An addict or an alcoholic is the most resourceful human being on this planet, and I'm a firm believer of that. And we'll find ways and means to get another one. Doesn't matter. It's the most important thing in the world to us. And it's just what do we do after? I mean, they have other programs designed, DARE and things to keep kids away from starting drugs. But what do we do after they've had that process? I mean, is there something you can do to keep kids? No, because we're going to find it. And the more you hold it back, like I was never really around drugs and alcohol growing up. My family drank and smoked pot. It wasn't really acceptable. But the thing was, is the more that they tried to. When my dad told me I couldn't drink when I went to camp out in 9th grade, he said you can't drink, and if you drink, and guess what I did? I went and got extra drunk to piss him off, and he wasn't even there. He would never know, but I felt that was my way of getting back. How dare you tell me what to do? Who do you think you are, my dad? And I don't know. That's a vicious. When I'm a parent, maybe I can help you a little bit more, but until then,
Anything else? Over here.
I think it starts with how we deal with our own pain. I lost my son, and I've never really drank or smoked. But I was just recently in a car accident Monday, and the first thing they wanted to do is take me to the hospital. And it was a bad car accident, but I felt fine. I'm like, what are they going to do? Are they going to just give me some Vicodin or some muscle relaxers and send me home? I went home. I took calcium, magnesium. I had a little bit of a sore neck. The other 2 people were taken to the hospital. They needed to be taken to the hospital. But the way we deal with things, too, as parents, we like she said, we've become a society where we're not supposed to feel pain. And we have to accept other people's pain also and let them go through it. That's just something to think about. And as for the officer, I'd really like to see more programs in the school, like a Zig Ziglar I Can't course that I took. Those positive reinforcements. You can't take the elevator, you got to take the stairs. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of anything like that before, if I might be the only one, but strengthening our children's mind. I tried to do it with my son, but when you lived next to 10 Mile and everybody's doing it, and my son actually died with other people's parents' medication in his system. So I guess it's going to have to be a revolution. That's the way I feel about it.
Okay,
I concur.
Okay, with that being said, we're going to give Jeremy a minute to switch over mics here with our next speaker. But there's 2 parts of this. Addiction is a family disease, and parents mirror what their kids are going through. Parents that have a child that's in addiction become addicted to their child. They end up sleeping a lot, not taking care of themselves, not eating, losing a lot of weight, not doing so well at their jobs because they are consumed with what their child is going through. And so we have 2 parents that are going to share what they've gone through with their children. Both of the parents have lost their children to addiction. And our first parent is Susan Gregory.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
There you go. Hi. Like Linda said, my name is Susan, and I'm from Sterling Heights. That's my son, Denny, up there. I'm really grateful to be here with you guys tonight. Denny passed away 4.5 years ago from a heroin overdose. And when he died, I knew that I was going to have to stand up one day and speak and tell other parents what it's like to lose a child. To help erase that stigma. This is what FAN's doing. We're here to show, that these are great kids. These are good kids from good homes. We're good parents. We did everything we could to try and save our son's life, to get between him and the drugs, but nothing worked. There's a lot of points in Denny's story when I reached out for help, to schools, to law enforcement, to other people in the community. But because of who we were, we ran into roadblocks. And I knew that I had a responsibility, to try and help tear down some of those roadblocks. I'll go back a little bit like the kids did. Denny, like I said, we lived in Sterling Heights, and Denny was your average kid. I mean, he was a great kid. I have 3 sons. He was my oldest. They all played sports. I was real involved in the schools. I was the kind of mom, the soccer mom. I stayed home. I gave up a full-time job. I thought, I'm going to do everything right. I'm going to be involved in the PTO. Denny had Bible school. I taught Bible school. I taught catechism. I knew all my sons' friends. I knew the parents of their friends. I knew where they were. I knew everything that they did. Denny and I were really close. We talked about everything. We had a great relationship. I mean, he truly was my buddy, my friend. He was the kind of kid that wasn't afraid to give his mom a hug and kiss in front of his own friends. He told me everything throughout his addiction. He told me everything. I remember it was about 9th grade when things started to change. I noticed a change in his personality. He got quieter. He withdrew a little bit. The kind of kid who, there would be 9 kids, at my house playing football on the front lawn or playing hockey at the church parking lot down the street. And all of a sudden, he wasn't as concerned with that anymore, And it was like the light was gone from his eyes. And I got really confused because I thought, he's a teenager now. He's getting into those years. I know they're moody. Is this something I should be concerned about? But I just couldn't put my finger on it. He was depressed. So one night I searched his bedroom. I stood outside his bedroom and I prayed, because that's the kind of family we were. And I prayed and I said, God, if there's something here in this room that I need to find, I want you to help me find it. And right away my eyes went to a cubbyhole underneath his bed. And there was a treasure box that Denny used to keep all his treasures in as a little boy growing up. And I looked in that box, and inside I found a bag of marijuana. And I knew right then and there, this is serious, because it was a large amount. I knew he was smoking pot, and I confronted him. And, he was like, oh, Mom, marijuana's safe. All the kids are doing it. You don't have to worry about it. I know kids that drink, and they act stupid, and I don't want to be like that. Marijuana's safe. And I'm like, no, Denny, it's not. This is a gateway drug. I mean, we've talked a lot about opiates here tonight, but none of these kids, when they told their story, they didn't start with heroin. They didn't start with opiates, except for maybe Cody, who was prescribed the Vicodin. Most of the kids come through the marijuana and the alcohol. And, the point is, every time Denny used, we could tell a difference in him. And as parents, we did everything that we could. Immediately I started, well, you can't smoke marijuana. If you're going to do this, there's going to be consequences. He was grounded. We took car keys away. We banned him from hanging around with certain kids. We just kept trying to do all the things that normal parents would do. But everything we did, nothing made a difference. This is when I first really and truly started to realize that this is an addiction, because most kids, if they get in trouble or they get caught with something, and it's causing a negative consequence in their life, they're not going to do it again. They're not going to go back to it. But he always did. So my husband and I, we started to reach out for help. And one of the first places that I went to was schools. And I told them, I said, this, Denny's not right, and there's something going on here, and I think he's smoking, well, I knew he was smoking marijuana. And they were like, you know what, don't worry about it, Mrs. Gregory. Denny's a good kid. You're a great family. All kids go through this stuff. They experiment. Don't worry about it. And, I just left there feeling like I didn't know where to go for help. There weren't groups like this around back then. So the next thing I did is I went to my pediatrician. And my pediatrician took Denny into a separate room, and he talked to him, and he came back, and he told me, you don't have to worry about him. He's fine. Denny's not smoking marijuana. And I'm like, I know he is. I found it. This is getting to be a problem. And I was dismissed. So things got worse. with Denny. And we finally realized that we were going to have to get more help. So I turned to some outpatient counseling, and we enrolled him in an IOP program. He started to do the IOP program, but he refused. He quickly refused to go, and because he felt he didn't have a problem. You know, in the meantime, with this disease, like what you hear what these kids are saying, things got worse in our home. We were fighting with him constantly. He was hanging around with all different kids that we didn't know. If I went to bed at night, I didn't even know this at the time, but he was climbing through the window, going out the window, going into Detroit to buy drugs, come back home. And things were just spiraling out of control. So by his senior year, we decided, with the help of some counselors, that Dennis needed to go to an inpatient residential treatment. And we researched, and we decided to send him out west to Montana. Denny was the kind of kid, he loved animals, he loved the outdoors. That's really who he was. So when we were picking these programs, we were told that this was one of the best programs in the country. We sent him there. They had a survival program that he had to do, a 3-week survival program. And we really thought at this point in time, you know, he's going to go out there and he's going to come home and he's going to be fixed. You know, this is a 60-day program. It's one of the best in the country. And I thought that I was doing the right thing. So what we had to do is we had to hire an escort service to come in the middle of the night to move Denny to rehab, because he wasn't willing to do this on his own. And when I look back at this, it's like, here we are. This problem started, in all reality, the summer between 9th and 10th grade. This is the summer before his senior year, like 2 years later. And instead of Denny going to his homecoming and senior pictures and taking him around to colleges, you know, all the things that we thought we would be doing, instead, we were moving him out west to a rehab for treatment. College funds were going there. So we sent him, they came in the middle of the night, and I'm telling you, to watch 2 strangers, one was a minister and one was a retired police officer. They were very professional, but to watch these 2 men come into your home, wake your son up in the middle of the night, and tell him that they're going to rehab, you know, it's just not what you picture. I had such a hard time grasping that my son even used drugs to begin with, and now he's going to rehab. Well, he went, and he was gone for the full 60 days. As a family, we went out to visit him. And when Denny came home, he completed the program. He was doing really well. And I thought, this is it, you know, we've got this fixed. But he very quickly relapsed and started to use again. One of the things is, there wasn't the contact, he didn't have the contact with other kids in recovery, like what these young people have here. I remember him saying to me, you know, Mom, I understand that I can't use drugs anymore, but I really don't understand why I can't have beer, you know. It's just a beer. I'm 17 years old. And like, Denny, you can't drink. And he's like, Mom, how can I go away to college? How can I even survive in this world? Everybody drinks. I'm 17. And I kept trying to tell him, you can't. Well, he slowly started using again. He started to drink. And what happened is, in the next 2 years, we entered into a real roller coaster cycle of addiction. You know, all the highs and lows that you've heard these young people talk about tonight. The drugs progressively got worse. He started getting introduced to the pills, and he got hooked on the Vicodin and then the Oxycontin. And there were a lot of nightmare things that took place, you know, in those 2 years. We had threatened to kick him out. We did kick him out. We did do an intervention. We got to the point where I suspected that he had gotten into heroin. I actually had gotten an anonymous phone call, and someone told me that they thought that Denny was using heroin. And I searched his room, and when I searched his room, I found needles. And at that moment, I thought I would literally die myself, because I realized he was injecting. It was truly heroin. I called a counselor, head of a rehab program here in Michigan, and he said to me, you either call the police, tell them what you found, or tell Denny you're going to call the police, show them what you found, and use that as a tool to move him to rehab again, or you do an intervention. He could die one time, he could die with one use. So I wasn't strong enough to threaten to call the police on my own son, So we made the decision that very day to do an intervention. And I called a professional interventionist. Within 2 weeks, we had our whole family surrounded. We had an intervention plan, much like what you see on TV on the A&E program. And Denny was surprised. The whole family was there. We went around the room, and everyone read in the letters, basically giving him his bottom line, telling him he either went for help or we were cutting ourselves off from him. And we had an eviction notice filed with the police, with the courts. We told him he had 30 days, he had to leave our home or get help. That we just literally couldn't watch him die anymore, which is what you're doing. When you have a child at home who's addicted, you're watching him die. And I knew that we were at that point that we had to take that step. It was the only step that we had left to do. At the intervention, he was truly moved, but he was afraid. I knew that he was terrified of being dope sick, of detoxing, of what life would look like without the drugs. So he wasn't really ready to make the decision for treatment. And he said no, and he walked out of the house, and we did file the eviction notice. In those 30 days, he made the decision on the last day, on the 29th day, he came to us and he said, Mom, I'm ready now. I'll go in for an assessment. I knew half of it was because he was afraid he wouldn't have any place to go. He didn't have anywhere to go. So we took him in for an assessment, and in this meantime, he had detoxed himself. So the counselor that did the intake assessment agreed to work with him on an outpatient basis. And I was terrified. This was a heroin addict who had been injecting, and I really firmly believed that he needed residential treatment. I didn't believe an IOP program was going to work at this point, but this is how they assessed him, and he was willing to do it, so we went with it. Shortly thereafter, he relapsed, and he got caught stealing. The one and only time he got arrested, he went before the judge. We did not bail him out, I should say. We left him stay in jail. I thought, let him stay there. He can detox. He can get clean. He needs to feel what it's like to be caught. And he was in jail. The judge, when we finally got to sentencing, the judge had sentenced Denny to a boot camp. And I was really hoping he would get treatment. But he was not court-ordered to treatment. They went against probation, and they sent him to boot camp. So Denny went to boot camp, and we came home from boot camp. Again, I was hoping that he would get treatment. But he was denied treatment. They brought him home on a tether. And I'll tell you, the day we picked him up from boot camp was one of the happiest days of my life. I saw my son again, clean and sober, bright-eyed. He was ready to turn his life around and make a difference. And he said, Mom, I am so done with drugs. I am so done with drugs. I never want to go back there again. We talked about a night when he was still using, when him and I had gone for a walk, and there's a shrine in our church in the neighborhood. And he had got down on his knees there, and he had said to me, why me, Mom? Why was I the one that got addicted? Of all my friends that used, experimented, when we were in high school, they're fine now. They're in college. They're getting married. Why was I the one? And I said, I don't know, Denny. I don't know why you were and not someone else. But you have a chance now to do the right thing. And he said, all I want to do, Mom, is play hockey, go fishing again. I want to go to college, And he was earnestly working, trying to turn his life around. About 11 days before the tether was to be removed, he had a 120-day tether, he was starting to slip mentally. And he told me this. We were very close. And he said, Mom, I'm scared. I'm scared of relapsing. and I'm afraid of dying. I think I need to go to rehab again. And I said, you need to talk to your probation officer. We need to call, make an appointment. You need to do something. And he said, I know. And we did. We made some attempts to get some counseling that week, but they fell through. And on a Friday morning, he left the house. He had to go take his drug test for the court. He was ordered to take a drug test. And he said, Mom, I got a couple hours off. I have to be home by noon. And I'm going to go take this, and I'll be right back. And I was afraid. And I said, Denny, stop. I'm like, if you have a couple hours, let's go to a meeting, call a counselor. And he said, no, Mom, I'm okay. I'm okay. And he walked out the door, and the back door closed. And the last thing he said to me is, he said, I love you, Mom. And I said, I love you too, Denny. And he didn't come back. And noon, the noon came and went. And I knew something was really wrong because he had never been late on his tether, not once. And I got a call shortly thereafter from the hospital, and they said they had found him to get to emergency room. There had been an accident, so I went. And when I got there, he was dead. It was too late. What had happened is he had left my home. He'd gone and taken his drug test. He passed his drug test. He went into Detroit. He bought heroin. He had a couple of friends with him. They went into a public restroom, and they used. It was a grocery store. The kids that were with him, when it went bad, they left. They just ran. They didn't call 911. They just left him laying there. And somebody else found him a little while later, but it was too late. I go back to Denny's funeral, and everyone there kept saying to us, if this could happen to you guys, if it could happen to Denny, it could happen to anybody. And I really hope that by talking about this, people will begin to understand that this really is happening to good kids. About a week before he died, Denny sat with me in the living room. I read a scripture meditation every morning, and he came and he sat next to me, and he said, Mom, what book are you reading right now in the Bible? What's your favorite? And I said, it's Luke, Denny. And he said, no, Mom, it's Romans. Go to Romans 6, verse 23. And then he read to me, for the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. And he said, that really says it all, Mom, doesn't it? And I said, yeah, it does, Denny. That's the kind of kid he was. He knew who Jesus was. He knew who his father was. And at his funeral, I was surrounded with a peace, that I know is our Lord. I know he isn't suffering anymore. I know he would want me to stand up here and talk about him and to tell his story in the hopes that it would help someone else. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be around. That's it.
Does anybody have questions for Susan before she sits down?
Susan, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great tribute to your son.
Yeah, it's hard for the addicts to talk, but the parents, maybe because I am one, I've heard this story many times, and it's always heartbreaking because I know the pain that Susan goes through every time she tells a story. So thank you. I love you.
Thank you. Love you too.
Okay. Our next parent that's going to speak, he has to get mic'd up here, is Mark Rudolph. Mark also has been with FAN since the inception, and his child is one of the children that died that prompted us to start FAN. And he's another one that always brings me to tears. So, Mark, if you're ready, we're ready.
Good evening. Thanks for being here, and thanks for asking FAN to participate. It's hard to come up here, as Linda said, and talk about your son. I don't have time to tell you about the first 16 years of our life together, where he was my buddy and my fishing friend, and my dad's golf friend. It's tough, but we heard from 5 young people tonight, and Susan, and I asked myself, what else can I say? What can I tell you that they haven't already said? And there's really nothing I can tell you that hasn't already been said. None of these kids decided, woke up one day and decided to be a heroin addict, shove a needle in their arm. That's where most of them ended up. And it starts off with having fun, screwing around, being kids, and the drugs that are out there, the prescription drugs that are out there today are so addictive that before they know it, they're dependent, they're physically dependent on these drugs. And heroin, somewhere down the road, becomes the less expensive alternative because they're not going to get drug sick. I've heard recovering people say that being drug sick is like the flu times 100. I mean, you ache from every part of your body, diarrhea, headaches, sweats, chills, you name it. But I do want to tell you a little bit about Ryan, okay? His mom's here tonight. We tried to be good parents. We thought we were doing the right things. We had punishments and rewards. As a parent, I can remember when Ryan was about 13 years old, it was like, what do you want for your next reward? And he says, I want to fly a plane. You're 14 years old. You can't fly a plane. He said, oh, yeah, you can, Dad. And he told me the site, and sure enough, he can fly a plane. So, we set up the goals. He achieved them, and we put him in a plane. He got off that plane, and he was about this high, and he was talking about how the pilot was reading the newspaper as he was flying around. And I just blew that off as, some kind of exaggeration, because nobody in their right mind would let a 14-year-old kid tool him around in a plane. So we asked him again, so what do you want now? And he says, I want to fly a plane again. Well, this time we bought him 2 hours of airtime. And when I brought him there that time, they said, you want to go in along with us? So myself and a friend of Ryan's, we were in the plane with Ryan. And we all had headsets on. And the pilot tells Ryan, don't touch anything. Which I thought was a pretty good idea. And we taxied out. We take off. And the plane it's rising up off the ground. And all 4 of us have headsets. Only the 2 of them have mics. But I hear the pilot say, okay, Ryan, the plane's yours. Take it up to such and such 1,000 feet and level it off. And I went, wow, I'm here. I'm experiencing this dream of his, and I'm right here to watch it. His friend took a picture of that, and it's by far and away my favorite picture. But it's an insanity living with an addict. The decisions that you have to make as a parent are absolutely everything opposite of anything you ever thought of. Changing your locks, you won't give them a nickel. Sleeping with your keys and your wallet under your pillow. I took the bathroom door off the bathroom at one point, and I can remember Ryan saying, Dad, how about a little privacy? Well, let me back up and tell you, the reason I took the door off was because I used to peek underneath the bathroom door to see where his feet were. If they were at the sink, or if he was sitting on the toilet, or if he was standing urinating. And one time he was standing at the sink a little too long, and I knocked the door down, and a syringe fell on the floor, and he had blood trickling from his arm, and he was going, what? What? And I'm going, Ryan, what's going on, man? I mean, we knew at this point that he had a heroin problem. He had been in treatment. He had been in jail. Insane decisions, I couldn't have pop in my house because he'd empty the pop bottles for the dimes. He would steal stuff from his mom and me, whatever he could get his hands on. It's really drugs that are now controlling his life. He has no option, okay? I mean, that's kind of the stereotype out there, or we all hear it, but I'm telling you, it's the absolute truth. Your kids are no longer making decisions. The drugs are making all of their decisions for them. Another time with Ryan, Ryan graduated from Fraser High, and there should have been a lot of names on his diploma because the last 6 months or the last half a year of his thing, Dr. Richard's back here, and there's a whole bunch of people at school, his mom, me, but one of the other rewards that we talked about for years was a flying fishing trip. Ryan and I love to fish, as you can probably tell from some of the pictures. That there, that's a picture of us in Canada. But when he graduated, he was like, he had been in jail, out of jail, in jail, out of jail. He'd been in treatment, out of treatment, relapsed. You know, this was already a nightmare. But he graduated, and one of the first things he said is, "Cool, when we going?" I said, "I can't take you to Canada. How can I reward this behavior that you've been doing for, at this point, about the last year and a half?" I said, "I can't take you to Canada." But part of the insanity of the parent is you are grasping for any straw that you think will finally click with your kid, that you'll finally get it that says, "I can't keep doing this." There were real concerns that I had about what happens if he brings drugs with him and they find him at the border. You know, now my truck's gone, I'm in trouble, he's in trouble, now I'm dealing with, or he's dealing with, Canadian courts, U.S. courts. Oh my God, no way. Worse, what happens if we make it through the border, we get on the plane, they take us in the middle of absolutely nowhere. I mean, we're 30 miles. I watched for a building. We're 30 miles from the nearest building. What am I going to do when he overdoses in the middle of the woods? You know? And I knew enough about withdrawals to know that he wouldn't die from his withdrawals. He might want to die. As a matter of fact, most of them say that's what they pray for. They pray they would just die and not have to go through withdrawals. But I knew he wouldn't die on me. Well, the part of me that said maybe a week doing something we loved, just the two of us, would be enough that he would understand that life can be cool. It can be fun without drugs. We went. We had a fabulous week, but it didn't start that way. We got off the plane and Ryan was drug sick. One of the pictures, the picture with the two of us by the fire, you see a pair of underwear hanging in the tree, actually on the line. Ryan went through withdrawals when we first got there. And I wasn't really afraid of him dying. I had a satellite phone if I needed to, you know, and I considered that. I considered, basically, we barely unpacked, and I'm thinking about calling the guy up and telling us to come and pick us up. But after we unpacked and after Ryan got settled in, or we got settled in, he started getting sick. He's throwing up, chills, diarrhea. Again, I knew he was safe. I knew he would not die. So I went fishing. It was like, you know what? We didn't come here to watch you get sick. I came here to enjoy myself and to fish. And, you know, hope you have fun here. He soiled every pair of underwear he had in about the first day. That's why the underwear are hanging in the tree. I said, that's your problem. Take them down to the lake and take care of it, you know. And that was hard to do, but I was angry. I mean, I was as mad as I could be, questioning why did I even do this. That's in Canada as well. That's a drug addict right there. But so the next day I got up, and we cried and we held each other and we promised, and you know, and Ryan, please, man, you've got to get this together. You're gonna make me bury you. Please, no. Oh, Dad, no, I know I can't keep doing this, so on and so forth. I got up the next morning, and Ryan didn't want to get up, so I just went fishing by myself. And I was mad. I was angry. And when I came back, he was standing on the dock. He was waiting for me. And he says, Dad, we got to put this behind us. We've looked forward to this trip for so long. Can we please just try to put this behind us and enjoy this week like we were supposed to? And we did. And I'm telling you, I mean, hindsight being 20/20, I am so glad we went on that trip. It's memories that I treasure. It was fabulous. But it kind of also points out the insanity of the whole thing. I mean, I got my son, holding a golf club up over his head, telling me to give him money, or he's going to whack me with the golf club. Now, we're not in Canada at that point. We're back home. But, this is my son. It's in the end, again, Ryan's in and out of treatment. He's in and out of jail. We don't bail him out. We only did that once, and we only did it because we were afraid his friends would bail him out. We let him stay in jail for about 3 days, I think. We were kind of afraid his friends would bail him out because the bail was only $100. So on the fourth day, I picked him up, took him up to our cottage, and had the first "what the heck is going on" talk. But a couple years later, he calls me on my birthday, and he says, "Happy birthday, Dad." He says, "I'm sorry, but I've been arrested again." I went, "Happy birthday to me." I mean, seriously. And I was, his mom will tell you, any of the parents here whose kids are addicted will tell you, we're glad our kid's in jail. They're safe. They're not going to die. They're going to get fed. They got a roof over their head. It's insane to think, I mean, again, you're thinking as a parent, the insanity that you're going through is everything that you never thought you would think. But Ryan spent the next 69 days in jail. We could only go and see him once a week for a half an hour, waiting in line at Hackle Hotel, the jail. It's a pretty insane thing to go visit your kid in jail, talking to him through plexiglass on a little phone. But the thing I remember most or with going to visit Ryan is every person in that thing was all the same kids. I mean, it was like they were clones of one another, all under the age of 25, all addicted to heroin. It was crazy. But Ryan was ordered to a 14-month drug rehab program up in Saginaw. And his mom, the plan was that his mom would pick him up and take him up to Saginaw. Well, the week prior to that, she was actually on vacation in Arizona. And she called me up and said, Ryan's getting out of jail a day early. And I was like, what? She goes, yeah, I just heard from a friend that worked at the jail. Ryan is being processed right now. He's being released. Well, she's in Arizona. I was in Ann Arbor for work. So I left work. I drove back to the east side. I looked for him. I knew it wasn't good. I mean, he's got my cell phone. But so that night was kind of tough. But I didn't really think a whole lot of it. I mean, we had been through this kind of thing a number of times before. So the next morning, I went to Cincinnati as planned. Again, part of the insanity. We had just pulled into Cincinnati when his mom called me on my cell phone. She had just landed at Metro Airport, and she turned her phone on. And the phone, there was a message on her phone. Steve, can you... And it's a hard message to listen to.
Mom, I have some awful news. Your son, this is not a joke. He can be found between St. Jean and Connor, and the side streets between Mac and East Warren. I'm terribly sorry, ma'am. There really was nothing any of us could do. I'm so sorry. Once again, this is not a joke. He can be found between St. Jean and Connor and between Mac and East One. I am so, so sorry. Good day.
2 weeks, right?
Yeah. I heard somebody comment, good day. No, not really. It took me about a year before I could listen to that message. His mom told me basically what it said. His half-brother, Paul, went to that location and found Ryan. He had OD'd at the dope house, so they put him in a blanket, rolled him up, and dumped him in a vacant lot in Detroit. Like some piece of trash. But these are the people that are now your friends. These are the people you're hanging with. And again, it's not, I find some comfort in knowing that Ryan is not he's not suffering anymore. He's not in pain. We came to Kensington a number of times as he struggled with his addiction. It's crazy out there, It is like an epidemic. It's all over the place. And it's starting in our medicine cabinets, as Linda and everybody else has said here. And I kind of have my own thoughts on what we can do. And I really believe from the depths of my heart that real people sharing real stories helps educate both parents, the community, and the kids. A couple weeks ago, we were at Lakeview High School. And we had the young people, and we shared the same stories we shared here tonight. And that Easy Paw event that Linda was talking about with all the recovery people, the 700 people, a little over the top for me. But I mean, it was a great experience watching 700 kids having fun, celebrating sobriety. It was really cool. But one of the people there was a girl that had seen us at Lakeview High School, and she was celebrating day 1 of sobriety. And it was like, man, it's all worth it, We think about tonight, and and we hope that there's 1,000 people that show up. But we all say, I don't care if one person's sitting there. We'll go through this whole thing for one person, because it's insane. It's crazy. I think I've probably talked long enough. We'll stick around. We'll answer any of your questions that you have. We'd love for you to be involved with Families Against Narcotics. We think what we're doing is right. Linda put a lot of time and effort into this, and I thank her for that. Thank Kensington for having us. And most of all, I thank you guys for showing up. Appreciate it.
Mark's story is always really hard for me because I knew Ryan. He was my daughter's friend. And I know that Mark loved him dearly and that this is a really tough story. Ryan was a great kid. He used to come over and teach me history, and I used to be a history teacher, and he was just brilliant and had so much potential, and it's so sad that we're losing kids like Ryan. So thank you for sharing your story, Mark.
You're welcome. Can I tell you one more quick one?
Sure.
I got an email from his German teacher just maybe 2 months ago, and she was just saying that a kid had pulled a stunt in school that reminded her of Ryan. And Ryan used to write notes to his other teacher on homework in German, and they were, quotes to stuff, and they never knew what it said because they didn't know German, so they'd take it down to the German teacher to find out what it said. And she said it was normally cute, normally funny, but one time he said something about, there's a bomb in the closet behind you, which wasn't real cute. Okay? I mean, the other ones were kind of cute. That one was, she said, kind of crossed the line, but that was Ryan. Anyway, thank you very much.
We're going to end with a video, but if there are any questions that you have before we do that, this is a very short video, and it's about a young man in Troy, so we'd like to end with that. I ask that you stay for it, though. It's really a powerful presentation, and I think you'll enjoy it, and it's not very long. You had a question?
You made a statement that it starts in the medicine cabinet. I've done some research on Vicodin, Percocet, and morphine, and it was originally created for people who are dying.
Mm-hmm.
So the next time you go to your doctor and he gives you a prescription for Vicodin, Percocet, ask him if you're dying. Tell your family and friends that as well.
Percocet, Darvocet, Vicodin, OxyContin, they're all opiates. They're all man-made heroin.
Yeah, we were asked a question by the Lapeer prosecutor on what do you think we can do to stop this, and I think it all starts with the pharmaceutical companies. They make $354 billion a year, and they don't put one penny into helping resolve the problem. We don't allow tobacco companies to advertise on TV, but we allow pharmaceuticals to dominate our airspace with advertising drugs that are killing our children. So it's time that we get loud and that we take a stand and that we start dealing where no one starts with heroin. They start with pills. And so that's where we have to start, is where the root cause of this. If we don't get kids, nobody goes out looking to stick a needle in their arm. They take pills innocently because those are what doctors prescribe and are supposedly safe, and their lives get taken away from them as a result of it. So that's where we start.
What I don't understand is why can't they do something about these kids going to the drug houses in Detroit? I know when my son went there, and he almost died a month ago, I called the Detroit police and spoke to someone, and they told me, mind your own business and take care of your own son.
Yeah,
Why
I
can't
will
they go
tell
there
you
and-
that I've been in law enforcement for a long time, and we can get into a lot of those areas, and I'm really going to encourage you to come to a fan meeting to do that, because we have to be out of the
Okay.
church in 5 minutes. But I will tell you that law enforcement has a huge problem to deal with. I know that our local police departments got together and did a smackdown. They went down and busted several houses in Detroit and really took it serious. I love our police department. They work hand in hand with us, and they are incredible men and women that really try to make a difference and have really changed their attitude about addiction. But they'd go arrest one house, and the next day 3 more of them would be back open again. That is not where we solve this problem. We can't stop people from selling drugs. We need to start where this starts, and that's with the pills. And if our kids don't get addicted to those pills, they're not going to be out there looking for the heroin. That's where it starts, and that's where the addiction gets out of control. We're going to hear Noah's story, and then we're going to end. We'll be milling around afterwards, and if you have questions, but I'm not going to come back up after the video. I just really want to thank Kensington from the bottom of our hearts for having us here today. I have prayed daily for the door to open for us to come here. Hopefully this will lead to a partnership where we can address the young people of this church on a regular basis. I think it's a powerful message, and I'm just hoping that the doors will open and that God will allow us to come back in here. You have a job ahead of you too. These kids have a daily battle, and I'm going to ask you before we close with Noah's story that all of you keep these kids in your prayers on a daily basis. Pray for their healing and for their continued strength, and pray that they stay with us another day to tell their story. Thank you.